You and I started talking about this because I did Mike Tyson's
hot boxing.
Hot boxing, and you were asking me how it was, and he's very subdued. I love him. He's very, very subdued. But we ended up talking a lot about pigeons because he was a pigeon guy. That's how he kind of started. He got in a fight over somebody who stole his pigeon. That's the first time he ever hit anybody.
Oh, damn.
And that's kind of a famous story. But he's a pigeon fancier, and I grew up with pigeons. I started racing homing pigeons when I was 7 years old.
So was that big? Because I remember I went to the Spy Museum one time in Philadelphia, and they had pigeons that had like a little briefcase on their arm. They had pigeon will have like a little. Can you bring that up too, Nick? Mm-hmm. They'll have pigeons that even will have like a little backpack on, and they used to use them for spy work.
Yeah, they have. Yes, that's true. And in fact, they used them for, well, of course, they've always been a military asset because they would use them to communicate, before they had telephones and walkie-talkies. And in fact, they used them right up until World War I. And
they really use them. Like if you do it, like what can you tell a pigeon and he'll go?
Well, you can't tell him anything, but you can. The pigeon will always go back to the first place that he saw daylight. So if you raise a pigeon, if you get an adult pigeon, you buy a pigeon at pigeon auction, and a really big homer, classic these days, people pay $1 million for a good homer.
For a good homer pigeon, please.
They rate them by miles. So if you're a 1,000-mile bird, you're worth a lot of money. Back when I was a kid, we would, pay a couple. Yeah, those are called blue bars.
Okay.
And those are Hungarians, which is the kind that I used to raise. And we would put them in a train, and the train with all the other, we had a pigeon club, and all the other people would put them in a train right outside of my home in Virginia, and the train would go down to Delaware, and the conductor would then release them all at once. And when your pigeon came back to your coop, you would take his band off and run down to the post office and have it time stamped, and that's how they would,
really?
Do the races. Yeah.
And so the pigeon, they'll know. So the first place it sees daylight is the place it'll always come back to.
Yeah, it'll always come back to. So if you buy a pigeon at an auction or whatever, you have to keep that pigeon locked up for the rest of his life because if he ever gets out, he'll go back to the place where he was born. In the military,
it's like a hot woman kind of.
In the military, they taught them how to go to they would have a coop on wheels. And they would teach them to go to that coop, and they would keep moving the coop so that the pigeon would learn to find the coop. So
no
he's
matter
not
where.
going back to a stationary barn.
Wow.
And in fact, during World War I, they knew where all of the falcons, which I moved to Falconry when I was about 10 years old.
Is that early to be moving to that, or is that where you
That's when I found out about it, and there happened to be a guy who lived near me who was one of the pioneers of American falconry, and I read a book about it. My uncle was in the White House then, and people were talking about Camelot, and I read a book about Camelot by T.H. White, who is a British author who is also a falconer, and that book was called The Once and Future King. They later made it into a Disney, movie called The Sword and the Stone.
Oh, wow.
But there's a chapter in there on falconry, and I read that chapter, and I just said, this is what I want to do with my life. And as it happened, there was a guy who had been an All-American football player at Penn State. He lived about a mile from my house. His name was Alvin Nye, and he was one of the pioneers of American falconry. And my father knew about him because whenever he worked as a designer of jets at the Pentagon.
Jets?
Yeah, he was designing jets, and he was an engineer. And one of the things that the State Department knew about him, because whenever they were visiting Arab dignitaries who came to Washington, The Arabs are all crazy about falconry.
Really?
Yes, crazy about it.
And that's falcons, right?
Yeah, that's falcons.
So falcon is, I mean, so when you moved up to falcons, were you just, I mean, I can imagine if you leave in pigeons, you probably left them behind, huh?
Well, actually, pigeons are kind of part of the sport of falconry.
Okay.
You use pigeons in different parts of the sport. So I kept pigeons. I had pigeons all of my life until I moved to California 6 years ago. I kept pigeons. But I still have hawks back in New York. I have my falconry license out here, but I never brought them out here. I got involved in surfing and a lot of other stuff, and it just wasn't as easy here. Yeah. So this guy, I apprenticed under this guy under Alvin I, beginning when I was about 11 years old. And then at that time, there was no regulation. They passed regulations in 1973, and then you had to get a license. And, I actually wrote the test that falconers take in New York State and elsewhere to get their license, and I've been involved in it my whole life.
So would you compete, like once you have this knowledge in this, so you're learning, and like what is the man teaching you when you learn from Mr. What was his name again? Smith?
He's teaching you how to trap the hawk, how to care for it, how to treat it when it gets sick, and of course how to train it and then hunt with it. You're hunting my birds. I fly mainly Harris hawks, and I've flown every kind of hawk, but nowadays I fly mainly Harris hawks. They're very easy and they're very, very fun, and they hunt in groups. They're very sociable. They seem to be, what you and I would interpret as affectionate towards humans, and they're almost like dogs.
So when you take them to hunt, I mean, this is because I grew up raising hamsters.
I didn't mean to be talking about this.
No, it's fascinating, man. Because so let's see a Harris hawk. I just want to see what this even looks like. And now, when you take them to train or something, what do they do? Like when you take them to hunt with them, like
okay,
they're in a cage or on your arm?
No, actually, they'll ride on the back seat of the car.
Unbelievable.
And
I knew that.
And they'll hunt. You knew that.
I mean, I just had an inkling. If I look like that, man, I'm definitely, I'm not driving. I'm definitely getting a ride.
And they're really just like dogs. When you get to the place where you're hunting, you let them out of the car, and they'll usually jump up and sit for a second and orient on the roof of the car. And then as you start walking through the woods, they'll follow you. And
okay.
And then I hunt with dogs too. So I have a couple of dogs who will be, looking for rabbits and squirrel and pheasant and turkey. And when something moves, they'll chase it.
Okay, so if you say when you're walking through the woods, they'll what? Just be kind of going from tree to tree? They know that you're their owner the whole time?
Yeah, they go to tree. They stay in the canopy above your head. And they know that you're going to kick up game. So, they know, they learn. Like the bird that I was flying until recently, I had for 24 years. Wow. And then every year I would breed that bird and get some eggs and babies out of them. And, those birds are now all over New York State and all over at least all over the East Coast.
So you're working at the grassroots level of helping the environment if you are breeding birds.
Yeah. Like I said, it was a passion for me from when I was really little.
Man, yeah, because I grew up. I used to sell hamsters when I was growing up, and we used to, the big ones around us were the Roborovsky hamsters. Will you bring that up, Nick?
This is in Louisiana.
Yeah, and we used to sell hamsters and guinea pigs or G pigs. They used to call them.
They eat those down there.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
they call them cuys in Latin America and Ecuador.
You get down to Ecuador, bro. You take a gerbil anywhere south of Paraguay, and it's a wrap. I mean, Nicaragua, you show up with one of these bad boys, they think it's Thanksgiving, Yeah. But we have a different affinity for animals now. I feel like if it looks cute or if it's been marketed as cute, it becomes not a food anymore, Once things get marketed as being too cute. So you'll get there into the...
In truth, it's not a good food, in my opinion. Anyhow.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time in Ecuador, and I lived in Peru for a while, and I ended up eating a lot of guinea pigs. I went to a restaurant. I took Cheryl to a restaurant where they were selling them for food, and they had them. You know how when you go into a seafood restaurant in New England and they have all the lobsters in the tank, and you can pick the one, and they're alive in there. Well, they had one of those they had this really cute guinea pig house, and you could pick the guinea pig you were eating, and Cheryl is just
broke her heart.
Yeah, broke her heart.
Hopefully, it wasn't Valentine's. That wasn't Valentine's
No,
Day,
it
was it? Wow, so very similar to the lobster in the tank. They just had these guinea pigs, just like in a big, like kind of a children's like playhouse or something, kind of little deal.
It was a multi-storied playhouse with little balconies on it. And it looked like an apartment building for guinea pigs. And there's no way they look like little people in there. And there's no way that you would ever eat one of those.
But some people are rolling in and being like, "Oh, that's the one."
Yeah,
that's amazing, man. Yeah, we never had any of that. I've had owl. I've had some wild meats. People that have like my sister's family will grill up anything that's dead. So we've had owl. We've had like what else did we have?
Roadkill type.
What, owl?
Roadkill, yeah.
No, they'll have like yard chicken, just chickens that they've raised in their yards. I'm trying to think of what else that I've had that was probably, kind of unique growing up. Snake. Sometimes I used to work on a farm for a couple of years, and people would kill a snake. And sometimes if somebody had enough time, they would cook it at lunch.
You must have eaten alligator because that's on all the menus down there.
Yeah, I've eaten alligator. Frog was really, when I was young, it was fun to give a kid some frog, At the restaurants, they used to have a lot of these kind of singing. They had like this kind of black group of gentlemen that were like a quartet, and they would sing, and then at the end of the thing, they would give all the kids a little bit of frog. It was just like some like fancy kind of restaurant we would go to, like when my parents were having an anniversary or something. But man, that's wild though. I don't know. I've never met anybody that knew how to hunt with a hawk. I mean, that's pretty. And do hawks have or with a falcon? Does a falcon have an arch nemesis in nature?
Well, falcons get eaten a lot by eagles.
Unbelievable.
And then at night, they get eaten by owls because they can't see anything at night. And that's why you put a hood on them, because once it gets dark, they just get calm because there's nothing they can do about anything.
Wow.
Their eyes are adapted for seeing both microscopically and telescopically during the daytime. But they're almost incapable of seeing anything at night. But a lot of the Western falconers, when they hunt sage grouse, and they have to hunt early in the morning because their birds will get eaten by eagles. When the bird goes down on a sage grouse, the eagle will see that from miles away and go down and eat both the grouse and the hawk.
Damn.
Those are, man. Yeah. 80% of hawks die during their first year. It's hard for them to figure out how to hunt, and only the really smart and lucky ones survive. They have a lot of nemesis. It's mainly owls and eagles.
So you're growing up. So you guys. So take me back also to the pigeon thing. So you would take a pigeon, you would let it go, you would put it on a train.
Yeah, we put it on the train,
and it was like a pigeon club you were in.
Yes.
So everybody have a pigeon. They put it on the train. It goes to somewhere, maybe down to the beach or somewhere, wherever it takes it, Myrtle Beach or something. And then they let it loose.
Right.
And
they
then
go like maybe 100 miles. The really good pigeons would go 200 or 300 miles. If you had a 500-mile homer, that's what you would brag about.
Damn. That's like having like one of those big marbles that does like a steely marble. Wow. That's fascinating, man. So now whoever got theirs back first, did they kind of win the contest?
Yeah, they win.
I see. That's amazing, man. I can't even imagine that. Because I think I would not have enough trust in my heart that I would believe that bird was ever going to come back. It must have lifted your spirits when it got back.
You don't take them 100 miles away the first time you do it. I would take them to school in the morning and let them go. And go on the weekends farther and farther away, and make sure that they come back.
That's fascinating, man.
Good evening, good afternoon, and other times. Thanks for watching that video you just saw. I mean, it was okay. But the next video you could watch could be way better. What if you watch a video right now that changes your life? Well, you could watch this one, or watch this one. Watch this one. Watch this one. Watch this one. Ah!